So in the last video we talked about the upcoming voyage, the maiden voyage from Hobart to Nelson, New Zealand. Prior to that we'd done a trip from Melbourne through Bass Strait, which was a baptism of fire, round Gabo Island as far north as the Whitsundays back down to Tasmania. I'd also done a circumnavigation on another boat around Tasmania, so I knew what the Southern Ocean waters were like. Taking on your first maiden voyage into the Tasman Sea is not to be taken lightly. There's been a few sailors being beaten up quite badly in the Southern Ocean. The way to get over that is with modern weather routing you can take the worst of the weather out of it. So we used a guy who has his job in the weather world, in the yachting world, is to give yachtsmen the go on what is the weather. His nickname is Clouds, and Clouds gave me what's called the go day. I worked on the principle that after leaving I could not turn back. The nature of the boat to try and tack back to Hobart against the prevailing westerlies, it was easier to go on than would it be to turn back. So the go day was all I needed. There had been 3 days of storm warning, which had been downgraded to a strong weather warning, when my friend rang me from Sydney to say the weather model for the next 5 days says it's great, and the 10-day computer model is also looking good, so go day is tomorrow. So I said to my wife, if it's good enough to go tomorrow, why don't we go today? But the sea conditions, the underlying swell coming up from Antarctica were 4 metres. But not far off leaving the coast of Tasmania, it drops away to 300 fathoms and the sea conditions were moderating. So we cleared customs at Hobart, at Constitution Dock. We had them actually ask what did we put in the bag that went up on the wharf as my wife went to have her last shower on shore, my first mate. They were watching. Very interesting are the immigration authorities in Australia compared to New Zealand. So off we went, past Tasman Island, drinking a nice glass of port and having some fresh Atlantic salmon that were caught, which was caught by my friend after many escaped from the fishing pen. Straight into really good waters with a lovely what we call sailing on the quarter. That's where the wind comes in from the rear quarter, not straight behind the boat. Sailing downwind, directly downwind is actually quite difficult. You need it just one side or the other coming in from the back. Downwind sailing conditions, anybody can do it. Just the genoa up, there's nothing to change. Pushing along 5–6.5 knots, and if we want to adjust the sails, all you have to do is pull some in on the furler on the big genoa. Very easy cruising. So off we were into the wilds of the Tasman Sea. It was really, really lovely offshore that evening. As the sun sank, the albatrosses started ridge soaring along these huge swells, 4-metre swells. The pitch to pitch was so far apart that it was quite easy sailing really. Halfway across we knew there was a possibility of running into a ship, because the ship goes from Tasmania to South Island, New Zealand with bauxite for the aluminium smelter there. And that was the only ship we had to worry about. We weren't in shipping lanes. We didn't expect to see anything else. We did see a Japanese fishing trawler which diverted from course to come and give us a wave. Had we not actually been keeping watch, which you should always do on a small vessel at sea, we would have run into a radio beacon at the end of a long line. The long line is catching mainly billfish. And if we hadn't have actually changed the automatic pilot to actually take off a few degrees to one side or the other, we would have hit the radio beacon. Amazing to go halfway to Australia and the only thing to hit is a man-made is a radio beacon, and we would have hit it if we hadn't have changed our course. So watch keeping for us was I would stay awake all day until about 4 o'clock. Then I would try and sleep as far into the evening as I could. Then when I woke, I would do all of night shift and collapse again the next morning, which is not the standard way, 4 hours on, 4 hours off. But my wife was not capable of doing the up on deck sailing because of a congenital hip. So she just did the cooking and the watch keeping, which was tremendous because you cannot stay awake 24 hours a day, and I believe that lone sailing is potentially dangerous. So everything went well, and finally, as the sun came up, you get that chance to only ever do it once and call out, "Land ho, fine on the port bow." And it's a wonderful feeling to know that you have actually crossed from one country to another, captain in command. There is a deep sense of satisfaction in doing that. I will never regret doing that to the day I die. So the Great Tasman Sea for us was fairly benign. We cooked bread in the middle where we were becalmed as the high came over the top, and as we came into Golden Bay, the conditions were a very strong tide there. There's a very high tide. I think it's about 28 metres the tide goes up and down there in that part of the world. The tide race was so strong that we're basically going nowhere, sitting in the same place, and we asked for permission to go and anchor in Abel Tasman National Park, which the authorities gave us permission to do. So eventually the next morning we came in and we had to go into the dock, and we had to turn around in a very small space, and there was a very expensive launch and the immigration authorities there to catch the lines. We had done the trip. So in the next video we'll tell you about how things went wrong at the next stage of the circumnavigation of the South Island.